Good morning and welcome to Football League World TV. My name is Ned Holmes and today I'm joined by Football League World QPR fan pundit Louis Moir to discuss the appointment of Gareth Ainsworth and whether he can succeed at Loftus Road. How are you doing this morning, Louis?
Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, it makes a change coming on here after 7 months ago talking about promotion under Mick Bill, and now it's completely the opposite, unfortunately. So, a lot to get into. So cheers for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Absolutely, as you say, it's a different focus sort of on today's show than it was last time we had you on when we were talking about that promotion push under Bill. It feels like so much has changed now, but at least a bit of positivity with Ainsworth at the club. Well, before we get started, just a reminder, as always, please do like and share this video. Subscribe to Football League World TV on YouTube if you haven't already. And let us know your thoughts in the comments. Are you a QPR fan excited, by the appointment of Gareth Ainsworth, a fan of another EFL club? What do you make of the wild thing taking charge at Loftus Road? Louis, let's start with the sacking of Critchley. Obviously hired as Mick Bill's replacement in December. Won just one of his 12 games in charge of the R's. That was that first one back in December. On the 17th, they plummeted down the table as a result. I think it sort of had begun to feel inevitable that the decision was going to be made. Given what he achieved at Blackpool, you have to think this was an appointment made with sort of a long-term vision in mind. But I think you can really understand why the club chiefs felt their hand was forced. The run sort of didn't look like turning around. There was a sort of toxicity between him and the fans. What did you make of the decision to sack him when it did come?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised, to be honest. I thought it was going to happen a couple of weeks earlier than what it did, because the run we were on, the run we're on now is absolutely awful. One win in 19, but under Critchley, I think it was one win in 12. And like you say, that was his first league game in charge. And I thought after that, a new manager bounce in his first match, but that obviously didn't continue. And it just seemed, from the first game to his last in charge, the players didn't take to him. There was no sort of, we didn't look like winning a game. I suppose a couple of games, particularly maybe Sheffield United at home where we were unlucky not to win. We played well and, but apart from that, we didn't really put in any performances that were sort of worth, shouting about under him. And he didn't really sort of fit in to the club in terms of that we're used to sort of a manager who is quite loud and boisterous, and Critchley was fairly timid and didn't come across well in interviews, and like I say, the squad just seemed to not take to him and his coaching staff. And I thought after listening to him in his first few interviews, he might be one of those managers who might not be so good in front of media, but on the training pitch at half time, before games, after games, he might be a different character. But obviously we weren't to know that, but it seemed like he wasn't, because the players weren't playing for him. And I think the longer it continued, it was the right decision. And obviously we ended up giving him a 3.5-year contract, which is obviously thrown away in 12 games under him. So yeah, the players just didn't take to him. We didn't really play well under him at all. There was no real style. There was a few questionable decisions that he made in terms of players starting and substitutions, and he just didn't. Yeah, he just didn't fit in. I mean, he probably, he did obviously a great job at Blackpool, but him and QPR weren't to be, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're right in saying it did just start to feel like they weren't compatible, him and the club. As you say, really highly regarded coach. We've obviously heard about, he seems to be so many other clubs keen on him in terms of the coaching roles he's held, and obviously that success at Blackpool. But as you say, it didn't seem to click for him, and he didn't seem to have that charisma that the QPR fans were hoping for. There wasn't sort of that reassurance rather in those post-match press conferences. Critchley departs then, and Ainsworth swiftly appointed. Ends more than a decade at Wycombe, where he's obviously done a fantastic job on a shoestring budget. When he first took charge there, they were battling relegation in League Two. He took them up to the Championship, and they were pretty unlucky to go down in that season. Louis, a much loved sort of former player and caretaker boss. He's obviously been linked quite a few times in the past. Now he gets his chance. A good appointment in your eyes?
Yeah, he wouldn't have been the first name for me. I mean, obviously, like you say, we love him. He loves us, and you know, I suppose it's arguably that he deserves this opportunity now to sort of manage in the Championship again for a bigger club. But I mean, he's gonna have to adapt quickly. I mean, obviously, working with the players he was used to at Wycombe for over a decade. I mean, obviously they're not the best sort of players, but he manages to get the best out of players who are not so good, and obviously was successful there. So, like I say, adapting quickly is going to be huge because of the position we're in, the players we've got. There's dealing with different egos now and bigger name players, and it's my heart loves it, my head not so much with the appointment. I just worry that it could end up not working out, and I just don't want to see his reputation at the club be tarnished. I don't think it will if it don't work out, because I think a lot of fans now are sort of, including myself, questioning to the board, like Les Ferdinand and people higher up than the manager now. So if it don't work out, I don't think Ainsworth will get so much stick at all, and that that's not what we want to happen to him anyway. But I mean, obviously we didn't get off to the best of starts in his first game. And now it's going to be a real battle to really stay up in this division with the games we've got coming up. And it's going to be interesting. Obviously, the style of play has been mentioned a fair bit. So it's just going to be interesting to see if he can adapt with a different set of players.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, that first game, a bit of a disappointment. That much long-awaited sort of return to Loftus Road for Ainsworth, the introduction before, Wild Thing playing out through the speakers. The one thing you would say, Louis, I guess, is, and certainly the advantage Ainsworth has more than anything else is, as you say, that relationship with the fans. There seemed to be a real clear breakdown between Critchley and the fans. I don't think they appreciated, he seemed reluctant to ever sort of accept that this threat of relegation, was there. He was always talking about not looking at the table. Ainsworth history and with the club and the supporters, that gives him a really strong connection. From your perspective, amongst the fans, is there an excitement to at least have him at the helm, and as you say, for him to get his chance?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, when it was finally announced, and obviously we're going to get, behind him. We're going to back him 100%. I wouldn't love anything more than him to succeed at QPR and do well for us. But I think, obviously, it sort of reminds me a little bit of when we got Ian Holloway back. I mean, we went for that sort of fan favourite. We were sort of in a crisis period then as well, and it's sort of, to bring someone in like that to try and appease the fans and turn things around in that way. But like I said earlier, I think he's deserved his opportunity now for a job like this. And I'm just hoping that excitement that the fans have and his passion, he cares so much about the club. I'm hoping that, obviously people say, oh, passion only takes you so far, which is true. And we just got to hope that it just works out and everything adds up. And, this season's obviously a write-off anyway. Well, stay up and then just write it off and then go again in the summer and see what he can do. But it's just going to be an interesting time because obviously, we've got a lot of injuries at the moment as well. I mean, the amount of injuries, it's not a coincidence. It happens to us nearly every season. And, we've got big players out. So, he's not had the best of starts in terms of that, on that side. We just got to move forward and try and pick up just a few points now in the next few games under him. Because, if these players don't sort of play for him, then you've got to question them as well. Because, look at the players he had at Wycombe for over a decade. That's why he was so successful there. So they'll be questioned if we don't sort of perform in the next few weeks. And you sort of saw that on Saturday a bit as well. The first sort of 20 minutes, we came out, atmosphere was buzzing, of course, and, went 1-0 down, but came back into it quickly. But then as the game went on, it just the same sort of problems you saw, like the defence and the leaking of another 3 goals, and it's just we seem very easy to play against. So let's just hope now, he'll have a week with training with them, and then on to Rotherham on Saturday.
Yeah, you touched upon it then in the sense of QPR probably become just very easy to play against in that sense. You'd hope that given the way given that under him Wycombe were a team that sort of no one really wanted to play against. They were a nasty team to come up against. That they were direct, they were physical. There's no one way of playing football if you're successful is any better than another, of course. But there does seem to be a slight compatibility issue with Ainsworth's sort of pragmatic style of football and a more expansive style that Beale and Warburton have played. He comes in, obviously later on in his career at Wycombe, he sort of brought through a few more technical players, the likes of Anis Mehmeti and co. Do you share the concerns over his sort of style of play, or do you feel that perhaps there's space for him to adapt into a sort of with those that more technical squad?
Yeah, I certainly hope so, because he'll have to with some of the players we've got. And like you say there, that's a great example. You had a player like Mehmeti, who's obviously gone on to Bristol City and done really well. He's a talent. So you're hoping if he can sort of develop and get the best out of someone like that, then you can sort of see like Ilias Chair sort of maybe thriving under him. It's just unfortunate that he went off injured last game as well. So, it's just the luck with injuries. He's not going to have a lot of time to sort of work with these players quickly in training. But I think, certain managers in the past as well have been sort of labelled, only one style. They've only got one style to play with. But, he can adapt, I think, because if a manager's working with better players, and surely they've got different ideas up their sleeve and they can adapt quickly. So it'll be interesting to see. And I just hope maybe there's a certain change in the way a few players play under him than there was under Critchley, because you had players like, Tim Arubenham, who was, he was looking good under Mick Beale. Critchley come in, he was playing deeper, didn't look the same. And obviously Tim was playing further forward in Ainsworth's first game and got a goal and looked better than he had. So players like that, hopefully they can develop more and just fit into a different style under Ainsworth as well. So I'm hoping to see that he can get the best out of, a few players who were not so good under Critchley.
Yeah, talking of getting the best out of players, then, as you said, the first game, hard to take too much out of it, given he's only had a sort of few days to prepare for. But certainly that there were the same old problems with the defence. They look a backline really low on confidence at the moment. They're not helped, I don't think, by some sort of jittery performances from Seny Dieng in net. But only 3 teams have conceded more Championship goals than QPR this season. And given where they were earlier in the season, that's a fairly shocking stat. Obviously, Ainsworth has this reputation as a pragmatic coach. Did you back him to sort of, raise the confidence of the likes of Dickey and Dunn and sort of solidify that defence?
Yeah, Ainsworth made comments about those two, didn't he? I think after the Blackburn game, saying he can hopefully get the best out of them and hopefully return them to form. Obviously, Rob Dickey, Jimmy Dunn. They're not bad players. Like Rob Dickey, sort of a season or 2 ago was on fire, and we were saying, we'll get a lot of money for him, he'll go on to play in the Premier League, and I'm not sure what's happened really this season specifically. He just looks slow at the back. He just doesn't look himself, and Jimmy Dunn's been a bit sort of iffy in recent weeks as well. And again, it doesn't help that we've got Liam Balogun out, Jake Clark-Salter out, Ethan Laird is currently out. It's them 3, they start really in the back 4. But like I say, they're not bad players. I just think the confidence has been absolutely shot to pieces. And if you want that to be brought back up, then Ainsworth's the man, I suppose, in terms of that. But it's just sad to see, because these players, they put in great performances against, some of the top teams in this league as well. And I just don't know what's happening. I mean, it's not those two just at the back. You know, it's the whole sort of team in recent months. And like you mentioned, it was a good point about Sonny Dieng. He's not looked as comfortable as he was previously last season. And I suppose maybe that's what's had an effect on the defence as well. If they're thinking, you know, they've got a keeper behind them, he's been a bit on and off, then that might affect their confidence as well. So they just, something needs to be addressed quickly. And, you know, we can't carry on conceding 3 goals every week, and we're just so easy to play against. And again, on Saturday, the goals against Blackburn, they were just too easy, you know. And we've seen it too many times, conceding 3 away to Hull, 3 at home to Luton, 3 at home to Sunderland. It's just not good enough. So they've really got to just step up and try and just play to some form now, because you know, we need, especially the defence, we need them to step up in the position that we're in.
Yeah, you really would hope Ainsworth, given his sort of, I guess, his reputation for getting the best out of players, and would be able to sort of inspire some new confidence in those players, and perhaps, you know, give them that defence a bit more protection in the midfield, but because I don't think the likes of Stefan Johansson and Sam Field have looked quite as solid either from my perspective recently. Let's look ahead to the rest of the season. You said then a bit of a write-off as long as you can avoid relegation. Yeah. 18th now, 8 points above the relegation zone, 12 games to play. A lot of games against teams down the bottom, and you know, there are teams down the bottom that as you said before we came on that they've sort of really got to hit a run for you to really be in trouble. But that's not really the approach you want to take. The focus this season now, Ainsworth was saying in his post-match press conference, he's not looking behind him. He's looking at the points you can make up on the teams above you. But I think supporters would all agree, Louis, the focus has to be just staying up this season, hopefully steering clear of that relegation battle. Yeah,
100%. I mean, as long as we stay up this season, I couldn't care less where we finish in the table, to be honest, the way we're going. But like you mentioned there, the teams below have to pick up. I think it could be a case of the reason we don't go down is because the teams below are just simply somehow been worse than us, really. But in weeks coming up, obviously Rotherham away on Saturday, Blackpool away, Wigan away. And then we've even got Birmingham at home. That could be a huge game. We need to just start at least 2 more wins or so. I think would be enough.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the teams below are going to go on a run. They're not just all of a sudden going to go on a run and pick up a few wins in a row. But I just don't, like you say, I don't want to be worrying. It's not the approach to take. Just hoping that the teams below don't pick up and we carry on losing. But I just don't want it to go into a scenario where we're heading in the same direction we are now, and it goes to the last few games of the season, and it starts, the gap gets tighter, and we're going into the last couple of games hoping, that we might have to draw or win a couple to stay up, and we don't want that happening. So that would be a nightmare scenario. But I am concerned about relegation. It's just the run we're on. We just don't look like winning. We don't look like creating chances. We're conceding goals, and that's obviously a recipe for disaster. I think if we do stay up, it could be like the good form we showed in the first few months of the season, really, where we picked up quite a few points, and that could inevitably save us come the end of the season.
Yeah, as you say, that run is looking particularly big. I think it's 75 days now since QPR last won a game, which is remarkable considering where what we were talking about just last time you were on this show, Louis, and the excitement about what QPR can achieve this season. Let's look at the summer then. We know, we've talked about it a few times. It'll be trotted out a lot, I'm sure, in the coming months. Ainsworth's record at building squads on tight budgets and getting the best out of players. But how important is it that the club back him this summer in the first window of his, in his first window in charge? With so many loan players, quite a few out of contract, could be a real summer of squad turnover. And how confident are you that he's going to get the backing, that you think he needs?
Well, you mentioned there, it's going to be another turnover, which we've been used to in recent, summers that have gone. We always have sort of the maximum amount of loan players you can have. like you say, a few out of contracts, a couple that I think could well be sold, and we might have to sell them to get some money into the club as well. So yeah, I think you're spot on. It could be another turnover this summer, which you could argue could be a positive, because then it gives Ainsworth even more of an opportunity to build a squad that is his. Will he get the backing? I mean, I'm not sure if you saw QPR's accounts came out, I think yesterday, and it reads for like horrendous viewing. I mean, looking at that, I didn't realise how bad. It's worse than what I thought. The money we still owe, and we're obviously not going to spend any money. We haven't spent any money in the last few windows. We've just relied on loans, frees, and if we do spend money, it will be minimal amounts. So it's hard to say will he be backed, because we haven't backed really any manager that's come through the door in recent years. And that's another thing I worry about, because if you're not going to spend a little bit of money, then you're going to be sort of in this position maybe again next season. I just don't want to go into next season with another negative approach, a negative feeling around the club. But I think at the moment, with the amount of slack that the board are getting, and Les Ferdinand, who's the amount of players that have come through the door in recent years have just not been good enough. They've been given longer contracts and end up either going for free, and we've spent money on players who just haven't been good enough whatsoever, and we've not addressed the issues that have been needing addressing, like getting a couple of strikers in recent windows. So it's going to be an interesting summer, but one I'm probably not confident about going into, because of the amount of players who are going to be leaving, and I can't see any of the loans. I mean, the loans, bar maybe Jamal Lowe potentially could join us permanently, and obviously Taylor Richards as well. I think there's a deal already to be agreed with him. But yeah, it's going to be another summer, and you can't keep progressing as a club. We're not progressing anyway, but you can't keep moving on. Every summer you're signing 12, 13, 14 players. There's no way to run a club. So it's going to be interesting, and I think it could get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, as you say, it's hard to make progress as a club when you're sort of ripping everything up every 12 months and starting again in terms of that squad. You would hope that given his experience in squad building, Ainsworth can sort of work with, but again, you fall into those classic problems of how much does the club want to sort of sign exactly the players Ainsworth wants, because then that leaves you in a difficult position if Ainsworth has to move on or something like that. Let's look at something. Let's talk about something that's slightly more positive. Let's assume, for example, that QPR string a nice run together, a nice finish to the season. That they avoid relegation. Ainsworth gets a bit of money to back him in the summer. What do you think is a realistic target for his first season in charge next season?
Well, I mean, you probably have to obviously give him the benefit of the doubt. Build his own squad, hopefully in the summer, and then, I mean, he'd probably have the ambitions to sort of push on and maybe try and push for the top six. But with the likelihood of what the squad will look like and what sort of players we'll be able to bring in, I think it could be the opposite. And I'd say sort of next season, if we start off well, we do okay, I'd be satisfied with mid-table finish, to be honest, under him in his first full season, and then just let's see how he can then progress from there. But I think that could be easier said than done. I just think I just can't see it going too well, to be honest. But I really hope I'm proved wrong. And like I said earlier, I'd love Ainsworth to be successful here, and let's just hope he gets the time. If we do go on a little bit of a bad spell next season, if we stay up, let's just keep him and see how he can, make things better. So I don't want because we've given him a 3.5 year deal as well, I think, like we did with Critchley. So yeah, let's hope he does get a bit of time, and just got to back him now and wish him all the best, really.
Yeah, as you say, I think from my perspective, certainly you'd hope that I'm sure he's got in his mind, really high sort of targets for next season. But you almost think for the best of the club, it would be good for them not to sort of fly so high that the expectations get really high, and then anything less than, as you say, battling for playoffs suddenly starts to seem like a bit of a failure. A bit of progress year on year, and then next summer to add to the squad that he has, rather than, as we've been talking about, having to rip it all up and start again. Finally, then Louis, but before we go, just two more questions for you. In your mind, what does success under Gareth Ainsworth at QPR look like, and do you feel like he can achieve it?
I mean, obviously, like I said, he wouldn't have been my first choice of manager coming in. I think, as he's been at Wycombe for over a decade, I mean, that's a very long time, and albeit that he was successful, this is a different challenge, and if he adapts, then why not? He'll prove me and many other people wrong that he is the man to sort of develop a club and push them on. I've just got a horrible feeling it will end really badly. I just think, short term it might be okay, to hopefully end this run we're on and just keep us in the division. Long term, is he going to be the man to sort of push a club for the top six or get in the playoffs? I don't think so, unfortunately. But look, I want to be proved wrong, and I just hope it doesn't go too badly for him, and he does, with his charisma and character, gets these players back on side, back playing, and picking up some results that we desperately need.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone really would blame you for being a bit cautious given what we've seen over the last few years with QPR and those financial updates recently. Well, that is everything from myself and from Louis today, and everything from us on Football League World TV this week. We'll likely be back on your screens next week, but that just leaves me to say thank you, Louis, and thanks everyone for watching.